He never walked up to that door. He never knocked. He never shouted. He never made a single move toward that house. He stood next to his car, on a public street, and he waited. That was it. That was all he did. And a man came out of that house with a gun, walked straight past his own mother, walked straight past the woman holding his baby, and shot him twice in the street. No argument. No warning. No chance to run. No chance to fight back. No chance to say a word. Marlon Sanders was 36 years old. A music teacher. A choir director. A football and baseball coach. A man who had poured every single day of his adult life into children who needed someone to believe in them. He died in the road next to the car he had driven to pick up a baby that was not even biologically his. A baby he had chosen to love as his own anyway. And by the time the deputies arrived on that quiet residential street just outside Houston, Texas, there was nothing left to do but try to make sense of how something this devastating had happened. Stay with me, because every single detail of this story matters. And by the time we get to the end, you are going to feel every bit of what this family lost. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Dark Evidence Lab. If you are brand new here, this channel is dedicated to telling the stories of real people whose cases deserve real attention. We do not rush through these. We do not skip the details. We sit with these stories the way they deserve to be sat with. If that is the kind of content you are looking for, hit that subscribe button right now and join the family. It is completely free and it means everything. Also, before we go any further, drop a comment right now and tell me where you are watching from and what time it is over there. I love seeing where this community reaches. So type it out. I will be reading every single one. Now let us get into this story, because Marlon Sanders deserves for people to know his name. To understand what happened on the night of May 26, 2026, you first have to understand who Marlon Sanders was as a person. Because this case only hits the way it hits when you know the kind of man the world lost that night. Marlon worked for the Port Arthur Independent School District in Southeast Texas. He had been there for more than 7 years. He taught music at Lucian Adams Elementary. He directed the choir. And on top of that, he coached football and baseball at the high school level. Now, those were not just titles next to his name on a staff list. That was his life. That was what he chose to show up for every single morning. Teaching and coaching were not stepping stones to something bigger for Marlon. They were the destination. And he treated them that way. Think about a teacher you had growing up who actually changed something in you. The one who noticed when you were having a hard week. The one who stayed after the final bell because a student needed extra time. The one who learned your name on the first day and never once forgot it. The one who pulled you aside, not to scold you, but to listen. If you have had a person like that in your life, then you already understand what Marlon Sanders meant to the students who passed through his classroom and his coaching program. His principal, Dr. Shalanda Filer, said she met Marlon during teacher orientation. She said the moment she saw him sitting in the corner of the room, she knew the kind of heart he had. She said he told her husband he was going to take care of her. And she said he kept that promise, not just to her, but to every child, every colleague, every person who crossed paths with him. Andre Bevel, the Port Arthur ISD athletic director, said Marlon brought something different into every space he entered. He said he never once saw people around Marlon arrive with a negative attitude or a closed-off spirit. He described him as a big teddy bear, someone you could lean on, someone who made you feel like you had a real ally in your corner. That is who Marlon Sanders was. Not a man looking for trouble. Not a man with a short fuse or a need to prove something. A man who spent his working hours teaching young people how to find something inside themselves worth protecting. And a man whose personal life reflected those exact same values. Marlon was married. And for a period of time, things between him and his wife were steady. But marriage is not always smooth. There are seasons where the weight of everything becomes too much, and two people who love each other still find themselves needing to pull back. That is what happened here. Marlon and his wife went through a separation. They were living apart, navigating separate days, figuring out what they actually wanted. A separation does not always mean the end. Sometimes it means two people need breathing room. And in this case, that is exactly what it was. But during that period apart, while they were each living their own lives, Marlon's wife began a relationship with another man. His name was Gary Davis. He was 38 years old. And during that period of separation, during the time Marlon and his wife were living apart, Gary Davis and Marlon's wife had a child together. A baby boy, 9 months old. That one detail changed everything. Because at some point, Marlon and his wife made a decision. They chose to come back together. They reconciled. They decided to rebuild what they had and move forward as a couple. But coming back together meant stepping into a situation that most couples never have to face. There was a child in the picture now. A baby who was biologically connected to another man. A man who was not going anywhere. A man who wanted to be present in his son's life. And here is exactly where you see the character of Marlon Sanders. He did not fight it. He did not make demands. He did not make this about his ego, his pride, or his comfort. He sat down with his wife, and they made a decision together. Gary Davis would have visitation with his son. The baby deserved to know his biological father. And Marlon, the man raising this child under his roof, supported that fully. Sit with that for a moment. A man willingly allows the person his wife was involved with during their time apart to come in and out of their lives on a regular schedule, for the sake of a child that is not biologically his. He sets aside every uncomfortable feeling he had a right to feel. He puts that baby's well-being first, above his own emotions, above his pride, above everything. That is not something most people are capable of. That takes a level of selflessness that is genuinely rare. And Marlon Sanders had it in abundance. And for a while, the arrangement worked exactly as it was supposed to. The routine was simple and clean. Marlon's wife would bring the baby to Davis for a scheduled visit, a few days at a time. When the visit was over, she would go back and pick the child up. No confrontations. No drama. Two households doing their best for a little boy who deserved stability and love from everyone around him. But underneath the surface of that arrangement, Gary Davis was carrying something the rest of them could not see. Every time that baby left Davis's house, he watched him go. Every time his son was buckled into a car and driven back to a home where another man was serving in the role of father, Davis had to sit alone with that. The woman he had been with had chosen her husband. The boy he had fathered was growing up under someone else's roof. And no matter how many visits he received, no matter how many days he was given, the baby always went back. That kind of pain is real. It deserves to be acknowledged. Watching your child leave is one of the hardest things a parent can go through, and nobody is dismissing that. But what separates a good parent from a dangerous one is what you choose to do with that pain. Do you channel it into showing up fully during the time you do have? Or do you let it sit inside you and quietly rot until it becomes something you cannot pull back from? According to what investigators would later piece together, Gary Davis had been growing more and more unsettled as the weeks went on. Whatever level of cooperation had existed at the beginning of this arrangement was slowly eroding. Something in him was shifting, and the people closest to the situation were beginning to sense it. Then came the scheduled visit in late May of 2026. A few days before everything fell apart, Marlon's wife had dropped the baby off with Davis. A normal handoff. Nothing unusual. The baby went to Davis's home for a scheduled few days, just like he had done before. But when it was time for the baby to come back home, the tone shifted completely. Before Marlon and his wife had even gotten into the car to make the drive, Davis began sending text messages to Marlon's wife. And these were not the messages of a man coordinating a calm and peaceful exchange. According to investigators, Davis was threatening in those messages. He told her directly that he was not going to give the baby back, a 9-month-old child. And the man who fathered him was now saying through text messages that he would not be returning him. For any parent, receiving something like that stops your heart in your chest. You do not know if he means it. You do not know if this is a bluff designed to provoke a reaction or if something in him has genuinely changed in a way that makes this time different from every time before. But you go, because that is your child, and there is no version of this where you sit at home and wait. Marlon and his wife got in the car. They drove to Blue Timbers Court, a quiet residential street near Tidwell Road, just outside Houston, Texas. They had no idea what was waiting when they got there. The drive from Port Arthur to Blue Timbers Court is not short. It gave Marlon and his wife time to sit in silence with those messages. Time to read them again. Time to think through what kind of situation they were about to walk into. Davis had made his position clear in writing. He was not planning to hand that baby over without a fight. Whether every word was a genuine threat or whether he was trying to provoke a reaction, it did not matter. The message was the same either way. This was not going to be a smooth pickup. When they arrived, Marlon made a deliberate choice. A careful, measured, intentional choice. He did not go to the door. He did not knock. He did not approach the house. He did not call out to Davis or try to make his presence known in any confrontational way. He stayed next to the car. He let his wife walk up to the house because she was the one with the existing relationship with Davis. She was the one Davis would respond to. Marlon read the situation and stepped back exactly the way a calm and clear-headed person would. His wife walked up alone. Now here is where things take a turn. Gary Davis did not come to the door himself. It was Davis's mother who came outside. She was the one who carried the 9-month-old baby out of the house and handed him over. Davis stayed inside. He did not come to the door. He did not say goodbye to his son. He stayed back out of sight while his mother handled the handoff. On the surface, that might have seemed like a good sign. Maybe the threats had been empty. Maybe he had calmed down since those messages were sent. Maybe this was just going to be another routine pickup after all. But then Davis called out from inside the house. He wanted to know who his ex was out there with. She did not answer him. That silence changed everything. Marlon's wife took the baby from Davis's mother, turned around, and started walking back toward the car where Marlon was standing. The baby was in her arms. The exchange was finished. In just a matter of seconds, they would have been in the vehicle and pulling away from that street. This whole nightmare would have been over. Gary Davis did not let them leave. What happened next took less than 30 seconds. And in those 30 seconds, an entire family was destroyed. As Marlon's wife was walking back toward the car with the baby in her arms, Davis came through the front door behind her. He was not empty-handed. He was carrying a firearm. He did not hesitate on the porch. He did not stop to say anything. He did not speak to the woman walking away from him, holding his own son. He moved past her. He moved past his own mother. And he walked directly toward Marlon. Marlon was still standing next to the vehicle, right where he had been the entire time. He had not moved from that spot. He had not walked toward the house. He had not said a word to Davis. He had not made a single threatening gesture. He was standing next to a car, waiting for his wife and the baby to come back so they could drive home. Davis ran at him, and then he fired twice. Both shots hit Marlon. He collapsed right there in the middle of that roadway, next to the car he had driven to pick up a baby that was not biologically his. A baby he had made the choice to love. A baby whose well-being he had put above his own comfort, his own pride, and ultimately, his own life. Marlon Sanders went down in that street, and he did not get back up. His wife was just feet away. The 9-month-old baby was in her arms. She had just watched her husband get shot by the father of her child on a quiet residential street in the middle of the night. And Gary Davis, he did not check on his son. He did not look at the woman he had once been in a relationship with. He showed no sign whatsoever of what he had just done registering anywhere inside him. He ran. Davis got into a separate vehicle and fled Blue Timbers Court. He left Marlon bleeding in the street. He left his own baby at a crime scene. He left the mother of his child standing there with a 9-month-old in her arms and a phone in her other hand trying to call for help. Neighbors heard the shots. 2 gunshots in the middle of the night on a residential street cut through every wall and every window on that block. People looked out. People called 911. Deputies from the Harris County Sheriff's Office were on the scene within minutes.
I was just upstairs watching TV, and all I hear was a woman like screaming, saying, "Gary, give me my baby, Gary, give me my baby." And then, of course, I'm still hearing it, and that's when I heard like 2 gunshots. And right after that, that's when the woman was screaming, "You shot my husband, you shot my husband." I look out there, she doing CPR.
Gary Davis.
Harris County Sheriff's investigators say the Gary involved is Gary Davis, the former lover of Sanders' wife. Court records show the wife and Davis dated after she separated from Sanders. They had a baby 9 months ago, but then she reconciled with her husband. Records show the couple came to Davis's home to pick up the baby, but he was upset.
It's tragic, it is, because of the situation that happened, but we knew that gentleman there that lived there to have a lot of anger issues.
Investigators say Davis stormed out of the house and shot Sanders. The beloved music teacher and coach died at the end of the driveway. Neighbors can still remember the moment.
It sounded like firecrackers, but super, super loud. Like they sounded like so close. Like it kind of had my ear ringing a bit. That's what it sounded like. It was just 2 shots.
When they arrived at Blue Timbers Court, the scene told the story before a single word was spoken. Marlon Sanders, 36 years old, was lying on the pavement next to the vehicle he had arrived in. He was bleeding heavily. Paramedics were called immediately. He was placed in an ambulance and rushed to the nearest hospital. Doctors worked on him. They did everything they could. Marlon Sanders was pronounced dead at the hospital. The man who had spent his entire adult life showing up for other people's children, gone. Taken from this world because he stood next to a car on a public street and waited for a baby to come home. And while that was unfolding at the hospital, while Marlon's wife was standing at a crime scene in shock, while that baby was being looked after by deputies, Gary Davis was on his phone. He was calling. After fleeing the scene of a murder he had just committed. After abandoning his own infant son in the street. After watching a man bleed out on the pavement, Davis picked up his phone and began calling his ex-girlfriend. Not once. Multiple times. Call after call. Maybe he wanted to explain himself. Maybe he wanted to know if the baby was physically all right. Maybe he was trying to get ahead of the story before it reached law enforcement. Nobody knows what he was going to say. Because when Marlon's wife eventually answered one of those calls and handed the phone directly to a Harris County deputy standing right beside her, Davis heard a law enforcement officer's voice on the line. He hung up immediately. He knew. The instant he heard that voice, he knew the window had closed. But he did not stop. Davis started calling again. From different numbers. Blocked numbers. New numbers. Whatever he could use to get through to her. Every single call was logged. Every timestamp. Every number. Every hang-up. All of it became a documented record of a man who had just committed murder and was now desperately trying to reach the one witness who had seen everything. Those calls did not help him. Every single one made his case worse. Before we go further, drop your location in the comments right now. Tell me where you are watching from and what time it is over there as you are watching this. I read every single comment, and it means more than you know. Also, if this story is hitting you, take 2 seconds and hit that like button. It helps this channel more than most people realize. Now, back to the investigation. Investigators with the Harris County Sheriff's Office moved immediately. Marlon's wife, despite being in a state of complete shock, was able to give deputies a clear and thorough account of everything that had happened. She walked them through the threatening text messages Davis had sent before they even left the house. She explained the handoff. Davis's mother bringing the baby outside. Davis calling out from inside the house asking who was with her. The moment he came through the front door with the gun, and the direction he moved without a single word of warning. The text messages alone were a massive piece of evidence. Investigators pulled those messages directly from Marlon's wife's phone. Davis's own words, written hours before the shooting, showed clearly that he was already in an escalating and volatile state of mind before anyone had even made the drive to Blue Timbers Court. This was not a man reacting to an unexpected situation. This was not someone caught off guard in the heat of a moment. Davis had been building towards something for hours before he ever stepped foot outside that front door. Then there were the phone calls made after he fled. Every single one was on record. The timestamps. The numbers he used. The moment he hung up the instant a deputy answered. All of it together painted a detailed picture of a man who knew exactly what he had done and was scrambling to control the fallout before investigators could close the distance. Witnesses in the neighborhood came forward as well. Multiple people had heard the 2 shots. Some had seen Davis run to a separate vehicle and drive away from the street. Their statements filled in every gap in the timeline from the moment the shots were fired to the moment Davis disappeared. And the physical evidence at the scene confirmed everything. Where Marlon's body was found, in the roadway, next to the vehicle he arrived in, confirmed that he had never moved from that spot. He had never approached the house. He had never made an aggressive move toward Davis or toward anyone else on that street. He was standing beside a car, waiting, and Davis came to him. There was no self-defense argument to be built here. There was no provocation. There was no struggle or confrontation that happened before those shots were fired. A man walked out of a house carrying a firearm, crossed the open ground between his front door and a parked car, and shot another man who was standing still and doing absolutely nothing. For investigators, the evidence side of this case was not complicated. The only challenge was tracking Gary Davis down before he could put enough distance between himself and what he had done. That challenge did not last long. Investigators located Gary Davis and took him into custody. He was charged with murder for the shooting death of Marlon Sanders. When Davis was brought before the court, prosecutors did not hesitate. They requested the judge hold him with no bond. Their argument was clear and direct. A man had been shot and killed in the street during a child custody exchange. The shooter had fled the scene immediately after. He had made repeated attempts to contact the primary witness after the killing, using multiple different phone numbers to keep getting through when one was blocked. He was a flight risk and a direct danger to the community, and specifically to the mother of his child, who was also the main witness against him. The court agreed. Gary Davis was denied bond. As of May 28, 2026, just 2 days after Marlon was killed, Davis was in the Harris County Jail waiting for his next court appearance. A trial date had not yet been set at that point, but the evidence investigators had already assembled: the threatening text messages written in Davis's own hand, the witness testimony from multiple people on the scene, the documented phone records from after the shooting, and the physical evidence from the street itself. All of it pointed in one direction. Marlon Sanders was unarmed. He was not on Davis's property. He made no threats, no aggressive moves, no attempt at any kind of confrontation. He was a man standing next to a car on a public street. And Gary Davis walked out of that house and killed him for it. Marlon Sanders spent his career teaching children how to use their voices. Through music, through choir, through coaching on a football field and a baseball diamond. He gave young people in Port Arthur, Texas something to hold on to, a reason to show up, a reason to believe that someone in that building actually saw them and actually cared what happened to them. He did not do it for recognition. He did not do it for any kind of spotlight. He did it because he believed it mattered. He believed every child deserved at least one person who was genuinely, consistently in their corner. And when he was placed in one of the hardest situations a man can be placed in, choosing to raise and love a child another man had fathered with his wife during their time apart, Marlon did not turn cold. He did not shut that door. He opened it. He agreed to let Gary Davis have a relationship with his son. He put that baby's needs above his own discomfort, above his pride, above every feeling he had a right to protect. He chose the child every time, until the last night of his life, when he drove hours to bring that baby home, and paid for that choice with everything he had. That is the man the world lost on May 26, 2026. A 9-month-old boy is now going to grow up without the stepfather who chose him when he had no obligation to. The Port Arthur School District lost a teacher who cannot be replicated or replaced. A wife lost the husband she had fought to rebuild something real with. And it all happened because one man could not accept the reality of the life around him, and decided that if he could not have his family exactly the way he wanted it, no one else was going to have it either. There are no winners anywhere in this story. There is only a baby boy who will one day be old enough to ask questions. And someone who loves him is going to have to sit down and explain to him what happened on the night his biological father killed the man who had chosen to love him like his own. That conversation is going to be one of the hardest things anyone in that family ever has to do. Rest in peace, Marlon Sanders. If this story hit you, if you believe cases like this one deserve to be heard, then do something right now before you scroll away. Hit that like button, leave a comment, and if you are not subscribed yet, subscribe to Dark Evidence Lab right now so you never miss a case. Every story we cover here is a real life, a real family, a real loss that somebody somewhere is still carrying. And every time you share these videos, you make sure that names like Marlon Sanders are not forgotten. Drop your location and your local time in the comments. I want to know where this community is watching from. I will see you on the next one.